Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Playeasy Warmup, the podcast where we dive into the stories, people, and places driving the sporting event and tourism industry forward. I'm your host, Kerri Shields. Today's episode is one of my personal favorites because today's guest is someone who has been a longtime believer in what we continue to build at Playeasy and a true leader in the sports tourism space. I'm so excited to share today's conversation with Josh Dill, Assistant Executive Director at Visit Frisco. Josh brings a forward-thinking mindset and a genuine openness to innovation that I truly believe makes him one of the most influential people in sports tourism today. Under his leadership, Frisco continues to push the boundaries of what destination marketing can look like, most notably through their new docu-series, Where Greatness Grows. It is beautifully produced, incredibly collaborative, and unlike anything I've seen in the sports tourism marketing space. It does an exceptional job of showcasing a city built around sports and tourism while highlighting the importance of community and partnership. I truly haven't seen anything like it in the sports tourism space, and I think you'd really enjoy. In this conversation, we talk about building a winning sports destination, embracing innovation, taking smarter risks, and what it really means to lead with both vision and execution in a rapidly changing industry. I learned so much from this conversation. My producers and I left walking away from this conversation just feeling better about what we do, more inspired, and with an even deeper appreciation for Frisco and everything they've built, even as an Eagles fan, something I probably shouldn't admit. But here we are. Whether you work in sports tourism, events, or leadership, or you're simply curious about how great destinations are built, this is a conversation you're going to love. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Sports City, USA, Frisco, Texas. Ever wonder how a small town in North Texas became the epicenter of American sports? From the Dallas Cowboys to the PGA of America, Frisco is where champions train, fans gather, and unforgettable events come to life. In our new docu-series, Where Greatness Grows, hear the real story from the people who built it. City leaders, sports execs, and visionaries who turned Frisco into a powerhouse for tournaments and meetings. With world-class venues, championship fields, and top-tier hotels all in one place, Frisco is more than ready to host your next big event. Watch the story at sportscityusa.com.
You have so many of the professional leagues touching this community, whether it's Major League Soccer or the NFL or the PGA.
Failure was just not an option.
It's been really cool to build the business that we have here in Frisco.
It's one of those places where you want to be if you're into sports.
People are pointing here, and they're saying, I need to go there.
Josh, welcome to the Playeasy Warmup Podcast. You have been a longtime believer in Playeasy and an amazing partner to us. And so I just wanted to start off by thanking you for your belief. I mean, having a city like Frisco really believe in what we do and our mission has meant so much to us. So I just wanted to start off by saying thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, but I really appreciate you guys coming into a space and innovating and trying to make us all better and giving us access to understanding what's out there. And it's a great environment. Playeasy is to understand what other cities are doing, but also just to, really figure out how we can level up and make the whole industry better, which is something I'm really passionate about.
Yes, you are one of the big innovators within the industry, and I guess you could consider yourself a vet now. And so you've been in the industry for almost 16 years, and you've been in Lubbock, Fort Worth, and now Frisco. Could you give a little bit of your background and what got you into sports tourism?
Yeah, I didn't know sports tourism was a thing. I was, an athlete growing up and went to college and was getting a PR degree. And my final project was with a minor league hockey team in Lubbock at Texas Tech. And so kind of backed into that and started, I was like, well, I want to work in sports. It's something that's fun. And so I did a couple of years in minor league sports, and a friend of mine who was an intern with me at the hockey team said, hey, I work at Visit Lubbock, and you should come over. We have a sports position. And I was like, I don't know anything about it, but I went over there and, it was a great move for me. Spent 5 years there in Lubbock, and Lubbock was home. My family has a farm out south of there, but got got to promote Lubbock and really did a lot in sports out there. And then my wife's from the DFW area, and so she was like, "Hey, I've done my time on the farm. I'd like to get back to the city." And the Fort Worth opportunity came open, and went there. I was only there for 3.5 years, but they didn't have a sports commission or anything at the time. And actually, when I started there, I was doing sports and Smurf market and other things. I remember Bob Jameson, the CEO, telling me in Fort Worth, he goes, "Well, we're not really a sports town." And I said, "Well, I think you're missing the mark a little bit. I think you can be." And I think within the first year, I had the NCAA in on a site visit whenever we were working on getting the women's gymnastics championships there. And he leaned over and he goes, "I think you were right." And I was like, "Yeah." And so I was happy in Fort Worth. Very much enjoyed that city. But Frisco was always out there, kind of hanging out in the background and doing so many good things in sports. And the Cowboys were moving up there, and I just said, "Man, that's a city that really gets it. I don't have to tell them that sports matters. They understand." And the same guy who got me in at Visit Lubbock, Ryan Callison, was the director of marketing at Visit Frisco then. And he said, "Hey, we need to get some sports expertise over here." And so that was almost 9 years ago. But Frisco has been one of the best things. I don't know that I could believe in a city as much as I believe in Frisco. And I tell people it's like getting a seat on a rocket ship. They literally have that Walt Disney mentality. If you can dream it, you can do it. And they wanted to do it around sports. And so it was perfect for me.
That's awesome. And I mean, you can already hear just your passion for innovation. Where does that come from? Is it your passion for sports? Is it just your passion for growing a business or your city?
Um, I mean, it's probably a number of factors. I just really love, I'm a big efficiency person. So I don't want to do something the same way it's always been done. I always think there's a better way. I heard Commissioner Brett Yormark from the Big 12 say, I'm happy, but I'm never satisfied. And I was like, that's a great description of kind of how I am, because I really love what I do, but I always just think it can be done better and more efficient. And so it probably drives my staff and stuff crazy sometimes, because I'm like, yeah, we really are. We have great stats and we're doing great things. And I'm always like, yeah, but we could do more. And so, and I think it's a little bit, I've dealt with ADHD my whole life. And so sports is great because I can always do something new and different, but it just keeps me invigorated to try to do something that no one else has done, or look at the industry through a lens that I don't think other people are really looking through. And so in Frisco, our mayor says that Frisco, the whole city is an innovation lab. So everybody's encouraging this type of forward thinking. So it just kind of fits me perfectly.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you could see clearly just through the docu-series that we'll talk about here in a second. Just the overall community impact and the belief in the innovating. And so, what made Frisco feel like the right place to build something as ambitious as Sports City USA?
Well, I mean, I wish I could take credit for it. We did start calling ourselves Sports City USA right about the time that I came over here, but we really started off just going, we knew sports was a differentiator for us. We had invested in sports pretty heavily for years, and it really just started to we we started with the idea of what other city in the US has representation from all five major sports leagues. And we defined representation as either your practice facility, your headquarters, or where you played your games. And at the time when we did the research, we were the only city that had that within its jurisdictional boundaries. Chicago and LA and a bunch of those have a lot of sports teams, but a lot of them are playing in, other markets or cities that are different, different than Chicago proper, let's say. And Frisco, just we had that. And so we go, okay, if we're going to put our stake in the ground and say we're Sports City USA, we wanted to have some data to back it up. But it grew from there, and it grew somewhat organically. It started as we have all these teams and these great venues. And then we started seeing that we had people who wanted to innovate here. We had sports related businesses. We had, sports tech, sports med, all going, hey, Frisco is where we can test things or try some different things or grow. And so, when you see the docu-series, it talks, where we started. We started with realizing that there wasn't a velodrome. There weren't very many velodromes in the US, and we said, "Hey, that's something we could do and own." And so we built some public-private partnerships that allowed us to do that, and that was kind of the model that we used whenever it was time to go, "Hey, let's go and take this a step further." So that's where FC Dallas and the Dallas Stars, and the Rough Riders all kind of came in around the same time, and we built really 3 facilities within 18 months, which I don't recommend doing because you have to reinvest in those facilities, and when facilities are on a 20-year life cycle, it seems anymore, it's now, we just went through the reinvestment in each of those facilities, or we're going through those right now. But then the Cowboys, choosing Frisco, and then I got to be a part of, the process of moving the PGA of America here. I was like, man, I've never, I've it's kinda like when you go out and get a job, you go, "Do I have a success rate of landing jobs that I go after?" And I've had a pretty good luck there, but Frisco has this great success, record of going, "Hey, we want you to be here," and people go, "Yeah, we do wanna be there." So
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, just you saying that you didn't even know that sports tourism existed, and you were an athlete. It's very similar to our story, and my co-founders Sean and Ryan, we were active participants in sports tourism our whole life, and we started Playeasy 8 years ago, and only really became aware of this industry when we spent a summer living in Indianapolis, and really got to learn what it the impact of bringing in sporting events into a city does on the overall economic impact of that city. And I think this docu-series, Where Greatness Grows, does a great job of really describing it in very few words. I mean, they're all under 4-minute clips of what the impact of sports tourism is. So could you first speak about what sports tourism means to you and the city of Frisco?
yeah, I mean, same thing. I was actually a tumbling and trampoline athlete for 12 years. And then I started playing football and basketball and everything else. And yeah, I traveled all over, and we went to tournaments and different things. And you just go, that's what you do. You don't realize that someone behind the scenes is going, "Hey, we have a venue where that can happen here." And so that was just kind of a shock to me that I knew it, but I wasn't aware of it. Right. And it's just, for us, in Frisco and in all the cities that I've represented and all the cities across the US and across the world, it's like, I like to point back to that Nelson Mandela quote that sports unifies things like few others do, right? I mean, people will cut out travel, they'll cut out, lots of other things. They'll cut out, they'll even, have salads at lunch instead of having a steak because they're trying to save money, but they don't skimp on sports. And what that means is that people are just dumping that economic impact into your community, which supports everybody. Our state comptroller back in the day in Texas said, the best way to grow an economy is to bring money from outside of it, have people come in, they're a minimal strain on your infrastructure, and they leave their money and they go back home. And I was like, that's exactly what tourism is, and sports tourism is just such a powerful segment of the tourism industry. And I like to say, it's some of the sexier stuff in tourism. Yeah, we host a lot of great conventions, and meetings and different things like that. But council and residents and things like that, they're always very keenly aware of the sports stuff that's happening. And so it gives that sense of community pride, that going, my community is so cool that people want to come here and compete.
And I'm 10 minutes into this interview and haven't mentioned that I am from Philadelphia, so I am an Eagles fan. So it was hard to watch some of the docuseries. No, it was very eye-opening to see just the city that has been built around sports. And actually, one of our producers of the episode is from the Dallas area and gave me insight into when she was growing up. There was really nothing around other than dirt roads in that city. And so could you speak to a little bit about the history of the start of sports tourism within Frisco?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Frisco's been one of the fastest growing communities in the United States for, 15, 20 years now, we have kind of that hockey stick growth where we were, in the mid 90s, we were, less than 30,000 people, and now we're over 240,000. And we've just grown with this city, and sports has been a huge catalyst for that. Like I mentioned, we started with a velodrome, and we hosted some cycling. And I think that's where our city leaders realized, hey, that's a great way to get people here and get them aware of us, by hosting Olympic trials and things like that here. And so, when they saw that, they went, okay, what else can we do? And they talk about it in the docu-series. Our council 20 plus years ago sat in a room and said, let's just dream some things up. And they said, what about a minor league team? What about, having an arena and things like that? And it just, every time that we've worked on those things, and the leaders have worked on that, they said, we don't just want a venue that's only used a certain amount of time, and that we want 365-day impact. So a lot of those recruitments, or those building of those venues, came with headquarters. So the business of sports started being done right here in Frisco. And then, there's all these other great, assets, or, advantages that come along with that. Is, if you're training the Dallas Stars here, which we have for the past 20 years, they naturally want to live close to where they practice, not necessarily where they play. So our community started to be a hub of, current and former professional athletes. So they're raising their kids here in this environment. So we start to have really great high school teams and youth teams, and but they also, they're a lot of those athletes are angel investors in different companies, and so they go, well, let's do a lot of that here. So it's just so much that comes from being such a sports focused destination, that it kind of took on a life of its own. And we're just at that point where we're just trying to make sure that everybody here feels supported, and that we continue to capitalize on what we've built.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point. Just the trickle down effect of the investment of building that space. And I think the docuseries was incredibly collaborative and beautifully produced. Why did you decide that a docuseries was the right format to tell Frisco's story? And it's the first time I've seen a destination do a docuseries like this, and I definitely don't think that it's going to be the last time that we see it portrayed in this way.
Well, that's what excites me, right? Is doing something a little different. I'll tell you where it started. I was at U.S. Sports Congress in Lake Charles, and William Knox, who I know and respect, building Grand Park, he made a documentary about what it took to build that facility. And I was sitting in a session going, this is really cool. And I'm a big podcast person. I love long form communication. I love whenever you can get into the nitty gritty, and not just get clips and hear somebody tell you the sales pitch, but tell you what the story is. And so I was like, we should do this, but let's do it around the ecosystem that we've built here, and really try to tell a story. One thing that we had going on is our mayor and our council and residents and everybody was going, yeah, we're Sports City USA, and people were going, well, why? And we were like, well, everybody told the story a little differently. And I thought, well, why don't we just tell the story the way we think it should be told? And then people have a template to share it. If you're inviting your relatives in for Thanksgiving, you go, hey, come here, let's host it here. So I'll send you this documentary, and it'll get you excited about coming here. But it was a very much a macro approach. I didn't want to just tell, like I said, the sports tourism story or the event story. I wanted to tell what makes us so special. And I felt like the docuseries was the only way that we could get into that. Now, knowing, again, I have ADHD, that people's attention spans are short, I was like, I could do an hour or 2 hour documentary. I could do a PBS style documentary, and I would be happy, but people would tune out. So by doing it this way, we have really bite-sized, consumable stuff that can be used in a multitude of ways, right? Our economic development will use it to recruit businesses. Our residents will use it or show it to their friends. We have all these different things that came out of it that we can use to kind of tell our story. And instead of just really focusing on, we want more and more events here, it's like, hey, we've built something cool. We want you to want to be a part of it, because that's the best relationship that can come out of it. And I think that this was the best mode of communication for that.
And my brain works the same as you, but will say the quick clips were incredibly impactful, especially just having the voices from different parts of the ecosystem. And so you have everyone from major sports organizations to leaders from the city to kids who are current athletes within the Frisco ecosystem. How did you select the storytellers, and why were those specific voices essential for this
Yeah,
docuseries? Sorry.
yeah, we sat down and we were like, I mean, I kind of sat with our team and said, like, this is whenever I tell the story of why we're Sports City USA, or when I have somebody at a sports tourism conference come up and go, I can't believe you call yourself that. I'm like, I want to be able to convince them that we have a reason to call ourselves Sports City USA. And so we kind of just talked about, how we got here and the history. And then Jennifer Stoll and I are really good friends, and she and I and Al Kidd, and we've all been really big advocates about the success of sports tourism is not just heads and beds. It's not just economic impact. It's how much your residents appreciate that we're hosting these events. It's what you're doing to grow sports from the grassroots level, and make sure that we can keep, Jerry Jones, Mr. Jones says all the time, you got to have enough left over when you go around to go around again. You got to have that forward momentum. And if we're not growing good athletes, if we're not, you know, having great sports medicine innovation and sports technology innovation, it hurts the whole industry, because maybe people start to slow down on participation, or they stop hosting events. So we were like, we just want to look at it from that big, 30,000-foot view and go, let's tell this story, and let's make it holistic. It's not just a commercial for us. One thing that our agency told us, and Verb Interactive is our agency, they are phenomenal partners, but they said, you got to have if you're going to tell a story like this, you got to have some conflict, you got to have some drama. And so we kind of were like, nobody likes going to a session at a conference or watching a show that's just, or an infomercial that says, oh yeah, everything we do is great and we've never done anything wrong. And so, the velodrome was a great one. And then talking to these people who are our partners are our friends. I'm really close with Becky Thomas from Kurt Thomas Gymnastics. I was a tumbling and trampoline athlete. I've watched Kurt Thomas, whenever I was younger, and what she went through whenever she lost Kurt suddenly, and how the city was a partner to her, not when we needed something from her, but when she needed something, she needed support. Those are those things that show the deeper relationship, where a lot of people who are new into sports tourism, they're playing checkers. I got to get events. We want to play chess here. We want these people to love Frisco, and for Frisco to love them, because then, just recently Becky came to me and said, I want to host an international men's gymnastics event. She goes, nobody's doing that here, but I want to do it right here in Frisco because I love Frisco. And I'm like, what better way versus going and hunting for RFPs, which you guys on Playeasy make it easy to hunt for those RFPs. But I would much rather have somebody say, I want to do this and I want to do it with you because you're my first choice. Like that, it's so much easier to keep an existing client or relationship than it is to build new ones.
Yeah, and I think that's something that really stood out in the docuseries was just the power of partnerships. I mean, even this morning I interviewed a big event organization that spoke of the importance of wanting a long-term partnership with their potential host cities for their national events, and that they don't want this to be a one-time thing. They want it to be something that they really invest in, not only the city, but making that just overall event experience as successful as possible. And so what does that collaboration actually look like behind the scenes for the partners within your ecosystem?
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot, and you hear it at conferences and trade shows and education sessions. People are like, "Hey, I have a pro sports team, or I have a venue, and I have to fight for a seat at that table." And part of the reason why I wanted to come to Frisco, um, from Fort Worth, is I loved Fort Worth, but I told when I left, I said they have all the toys in the toy box, right, for a sports guy up in Frisco. But it was even a step further. It was like, I didn't have to go to FC Dallas and go, "Hey, I want to help you guys. I want to be a part of it." They were already city partners and they believed in the city. And so I was welcomed with open arms. And There's a couple of cities that I know do this really well. I know Kansas City, Kathy has built such a great network there where her partners look to her to do these things. And that I tell Kathy all the time, I want to be Kathy Nelson when I grow up, but Frisco wants to be Kansas City when it grows up, or Indianapolis, or some of these other cities that we aspire to be and so it's really incredible. All of our partners, we don't have to go to them and beg to help, or beg them to take events. It's a collaborative process where they're calling us, we're calling them and going, "Hey, we have this idea." But because we have ongoing regular communication, I also know what the Cowboys want inside their facility. I know what makes them money, right? And I know what makes the Stars money. And so whenever I look at an event, I go, well, it may not bring in a ton of F&B revenue or parking revenue or anything like that. I'm actually the first one to go, that's not a good event for them. We'll make sure that they, if they want it, they can have it. But we're almost protective of each other in that way, to go, we want the best quality of events to take place. And Ford Center is a great example. The Cowboys, they do a ton of corporate events in there, because people will, a Johnsonville Sausage may come in and rent out Ford Center for they may bring in a country act, do a private concert for a bunch of their people, and they can make, $250,000, $300,000 in a night on one of those events. And so it's silly for me and my team to go to them and go, yeah, we want to do an event that has a 2-week build out, and we don't want you to charge any rent for while they're moving in and all of that, when I know we're costing them revenue. And so that basic principle of partnership is caring about what the other person needs more than what you care about what you need. And we've always just tried to lead with that. I did the Disney college program. I worked at Disney. And so my partnership model has always been, I want to make sure you feel like you're getting more out of this than I am.
And it's something we hear literally every day. We are in a unique position to be able to talk to destinations across the country on a daily basis. And we're always asked, how do we make our partnerships better? Or how do we, connect with our local university or our local restaurants? And I think the communication and the trust piece are two very important factors in that. But do you have any advice for cities who are looking to better those partnerships within their community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I've been through a couple of different situations in Fort Worth. Whenever I got to Fort Worth, Texas Motor Speedway was very much on the far north end of Fort Worth. And they said, well, downtown Fort Worth is not even really a part of this. We're kind of our own area. And so, I had to be very aggressive, I guess you would say, or just, to make sure I could get in front of Eddie Gossage was the president of Texas Motor Speedway. And I knew that there was a bit of a strain in the relationship. And so I was like, I'm going to be intentional about going out there, asking him what he needs, making sure that it's not like, hey, you need to do this so that we can be successful, but going, what do you need? What can you do? What are your priorities and your KPIs, and understanding that? And so I think that's a big part of it. I'll give you an example of something that, and this is much more, I'm not talking about Texas Motor Speedway, but a lot of cities, they don't have a TMS, in their jurisdiction. But I had my local parks in Fort Worth. I wanted to host the ECNL, an ECNL tournament there in Fort Worth, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, we our budget got cut. We're not going to do overseeding on the Rolling Hills complex." And I said, well, we definitely need overseeding. This was a February event. And so we needed ryegrass planted so that it would come up through the Bermuda and it would still be playable in February in Texas. And they said, yeah, our budget got cut at Parks and Rec. And I said, okay. And I went in Fort Worth and I said, hey, can I find some money to pay for the overseeding? Because I want it to happen for this event. Just by doing that act, the Parks and Rec director and the city manager came to me and said, if you believe in it this much that it's important to do overseeding, we will find the money. So I didn't end up having to pay anything. I just said it's important and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is to do that. And from that, literally the Parks and Rec director said, hey, you know what? These events that you guys bring in really do help the resident, and they fit our market and everything else. So I'm going to start carving out 2 weeks on the beginning of a season, 2 weeks at the end of a season for you to just put tourism events in here, because I because I knew that they needed something and I was willing to find a way to fill that gap. And it ended up not costing me anything, but it built a relationship that showed that I care about what matters to them.
I love that story, and I think it just speaks to the incredible importance of partnerships within this industry and what it is that you do, because the investment in time and trust and care um, goes a long way. So I love that example. So you bring such a data-driven approach to sports tourism. How has data shaped Frisco's storytelling and the execution of Sports City USA's brand?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like not a lot of sports, athletes and stuff that we all know that data's out there and it's important, but um, a lot of guys are like, "Hey, I just love sports, but the data and stuff, someone else will do that." I don't know what caused me to get nerdy about it and start to learn more about it, but as I started learning how DMOs operate, and for me, in every destination I've been in, I needed to understand what role did sports need to play? Because if you have a ton of sports, that's great, but it may be preventing you from hosting some higher paying, higher rated corporate business and all of that. So for me, it was always going, I don't want to be in this mode of going, well, we did this many events, let's do 10% more next year. We did this many room nights or this much economic impact, let's do 10% more. I go, I want the right mix. I want sports to play the role that it's meant to play in this destination. And so that all started with me in Fort Worth and trying to understand that, because it was a great corporate market over there. And so I kind of got into this idea of what is our saturation point, and I think that's different for every city. And so, we turn away a lot of sports business in Frisco because there's a bigger opportunity on the corporate side, or transient maybe driving over certain periods. And we go, why would we want to cram something in that would drive rates down? So it just got to this point where I'm like, I was looking at, sports. And I was like, I was going to run through a wall to try to do as much sports as possible. And then I had to zoom out and go, wait, at the end of the day, I care about how much money my hotels make, how much money my venues make, how much tax is generated, all of those things. And so I need to broaden my scope and think bigger. And it's led me down some interesting things. I mean, I literally have a PR degree because I only had to take 2 math classes. And now I do a ton of economic impact analysis and I do a ton of forecasting, and I'm like Excel spreadsheet geek now. But I don't know. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
We have a very similar brains. But so you guys have had a massive increase in sports tourism over the last 7 years. And you just spoke to the need for quality over quantity. What do you look for out of those quality organizations and events that you bring into Frisco?
Yeah, again, a lot of this comes from conversations I've had with Jennifer Stoll over years and years. We've just become great friends because she's probably one of the smartest people I know in sports tourism. And whenever I can be around somebody who's a visionary and soak up some of their knowledge, I take that opportunity. But we did go back and develop, and we've been using it for the last few years, a kind of a scorecard for our events. And that's led to where I have a scorecard now for meetings and one for sports. But I was like, I know what the key metrics are. I know room nights. Um, you know, I know economic impact. I know some of those things, but resident sentiment, media value, all of those things that we talk about are great byproducts of hosting these events. How do you measure them? And for our budget, I can't pay to have someone just always evaluating how much media value we're getting out of everything. So we just built a scorecard, and our sports scorecard is built on 13 different kind of things that we think make a good sporting event for Frisco. And it includes, like I said, all those kind of key metrics, but it also goes, is a local resident involved in wanting to bring this event here? Will we have local people participating in it? Is the community aware that it's here? Do community members attend? Do community members see it as a point of pride? When we hosted the FCS championship for 15 years, there were a lot of residents in Frisco who were like, we host the Division I football championship for the NCAA. We're proud of that. We built that. We grew that event from what it was to being a sellout, almost 14 out of the 15 years that we hosted it. And a lot of that's in part due to North Dakota State and their great football program. But we wanted to, and is there corporate social responsibility? Are there things that are given back to the community through hosting? And I was like, let's just figure out a way to put a metric to that, and then we kind of go through and look and say, if we have to choose between two events, which one scores higher? That's the one that we're going to pursue. Is there something about this event that's great? And then what I wanted to be able to show is, instead of next year someone coming to me and going, do 10% more than you did last year, I can say, hey, we actually may have done the same, we may have done less, but the quality score of the stuff that we hosted actually went up. So it shifts that mentality from just going, do more, do more, do more, to do better, do better, do better, which is something I can get behind.
That's incredible. And I think it's so interesting. I talk to event organizers all the time. And now with the shift in not just tracking success from heads and beds, but the digital imprint and the community impact, and them being able to communicate that to a destination, is something that I think people are still learning. And so, one, is your scorecard something that you share with other destinations event organizers? And two, do you have any advice for an event organizer and how they communicate that within their RFP or just communication with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've shared it. I did a session at Congress last year and shared my scorecard, and immediately got a bunch of people reaching out, going, "Hey, share that." And for me, I'm like, I don't. It's not proprietary. It's just something I built. It works for us. You have to adapt it for your destination because you have different, priorities and things like that. But I've always been an open book, and I try to share it with other destinations. We don't typically talk to the rights holders about what it scored, because I don't want anybody getting, their feelings hurt or anything like that. Or someone going and saying, hey, this is our event is scored this much according to this. Well, it doesn't translate from city to city all the time, because you have, what's a big event for me is not a big event for Detroit all the time, right? So but I do think that event organizers, and that's one of the things that I want to push even through the docu-series, is it's that partnership. What is your story? What story do you want to tell? But the second question is, what story do people want to hear? Right? I can tell people over and over, this is how many events we did and all this, but my residents don't necessarily want to hear that. They want to hear how it benefits them. And so if I'm an event organizer and I'm coming into a city, yeah, I want to show that we had a great event, but how do I show and partner with that destination to show that that event really fit with that city, or these athletes and attendees and parents and everything else got a unique experience because it was in that destination. Again, it's thinking through the lens of who's across the table from you and what helps them, and then trying to tell a cohesive story that does both things. And I think whenever you can do that, it's really impactful and really powerful. And that's what I think our docu-series hopefully does, is show that it's not just about Josh wants to book room nights, Josh wants to collect, taxes and all of this stuff, but going, my event people go, I want to grow the sport. Well, I'm going to show you that we can do that here. Or they say, hey, I want to grow my revenue, or I want to grow my awareness of the sport. We can do that for you here, and it benefits both of us. And so that's just always the goal.
Yeah, and I can attest that the docuseries does a great job of that. And it makes me really happy that you are an open book about this, because this is not the conversation that we were having 6 years ago. And I think that you are a big proponent just moving the industry forward. And I think people will get a lot out of just this conversation. And so, switching gears back to Frisco, the momentum's not stopping for you guys. I know the PGA of America relocation was a huge milestone. What doors did that open for Frisco's broader sports strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the PGA is a great partner. Obviously, having them move here, there's a lot of great benefits to us. Our high school golfers now get to practice on the golf course that it will host the PGA Championship in 2027. Just relocating that group here, since tourism was part of that conversation, we said, you know, yeah, you can make the business model work, but what really is great for the city? And we went out and said, we want to host a major event every 2 years. And we were able to put that into our master development agreement with the PGA to say every other year, we're either going to host the women's championship, the senior championship, or the PGA championship. But we also got all the PGA Junior League events for the next 10 years and a lot of other things there. So, they're great partners. They're also innovators. And that's one of the things when you look around in Frisco's, what drew me here is, love him or hate him, Jerry Jones is an innovator. The Hunt family and Lamar Hunt's legacy of, they own the Chiefs, they own FC Dallas, they own part of the Chicago Bulls. They started the NWSL. They were part of MLS founding here. And then Lamar also started professional tennis in this country. Like, being around people who want to innovate and want to maybe step outside of what their core mission is because they know it's good for the overall sport, like that's what the energy is here. That's what our ecosystem is. And so whenever we are recruiting new businesses to move here, whether it's a sports organization or somebody who's tangential to sports, our sports partners go, hey, how can we help you? So we were working on moving a national governing body here not too long ago. And the PGA said, we want to meet the CEO of that organization and tell them, and their line was great. They said, Frisco rolled out the red carpet for us, but they kept the red carpet out. We've been here for several years and they're still at our door going, how can we be a partner and be helpful? And that's a powerful message to send to somebody who's going, I'm thinking about relocating all my employees, and changing my whole business model to move somewhere, is realizing that we're not just and this is big in the sports tourism industry. It's not just, hey, I got the contract, I got it signed, now go run your event. I'm here to make sure your event is successful too, just like I am your business or anything else. And when that mentality is pervasive in the city, it's extremely, extremely powerful.
I think it speaks once again just to the importance of committing to those partnerships and having organizations like the PGA selling Frisco itself to potential new business. And so that's awesome. And you guys are also preparing in 2026 to host base camp for FIFA World Cup. How are you thinking about this moment and what will it mean for the city of Frisco?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, it's like I have several jobs, but one of them is all World Cup right now, and I'm very blessed that Monica Paul is leading the efforts here in Dallas. And again, our big four cities, Fort Worth, Arlington, Dallas, and Frisco, are all working in lockstep. Like we're friends. We want to work together, so we're not going, oh, I got to make sure that this city feels represented. Monica does a great job of making sure that we're included in everything. And yeah, we know that we will own a base camp, and we're a tier 1 base camp, one of 8. So we feel like we're well positioned to get one of the top delegations to choose Frisco. But it's going to be great because it gives us an opportunity. We've never done a lot of international marketing, so now we have a reason to go out and do some international marketing and learn some things that will benefit us in the future. Because just because we finished the 2026 World Cup, which will be probably the largest event a lot of us will work on, in 2027 we have the PGA Championship, which is an international event. We have designs on hosting a Ryder Cup in the future, which will be an international event. And then the 2031 Women's World Cup, we're going to be, playing a much bigger role in that if we get that opportunity. So it really, I say it all the time, sports is a catalyst. Sports is what, we got to get ready for this World Cup, but what can we learn in preparing for this World Cup that will benefit us for everything else that we're doing? We're opening Universal Kids Resort here right before the World Cup. And there's things that theme parks need, like drone detection and drone mitigation and things like that now MLS is asking for. So we'll learn a lot in doing that for World Cup, but it'll benefit our other partners in Universal, but it will also benefit MLS as we have to put together a drone plan for that. And our city is just going, our police department, and because I'm a city employee here in Frisco, my police chief is at the table with me going, hey, can we use World Cup as a reason or as an excuse to go out and get some more drones so that we can train our officers on it, because it will benefit all the other events you bring here, but it'll also benefit Universal and other things. So it's just I think sports is just that great excuse to do really cool things, and Frisco's the perfect place for that to happen.
I don't know how you keep all of this straight, everything you guys have going on. And you haven't even mentioned the update. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a $180 million renovation to your soccer complex, which in the docu-series was said it could be one of the best soccer facilities out there. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Hunt family, and I work with Dan Hunt, and Jimmy Smith and the guys over at FC Dallas, but they were one of the first soccer specific stadiums in the US because that facility is over 20 years old. And so we were, Frisco was one of the first in that regard. And, but since that time, right? I mean, soccer stadiums have popped up, really amazing soccer stadiums. I know, the stadium down in Austin is phenomenal. I've been down there. I know Kansas City just built the current stadium, and there's just all these great things. And so, like I said, we built 3 facilities within 18 months of each other, and it was time to reinvest. But we had taken that public private partnership, which our public private partnership includes our school district, our economic development corporation, our community development corporation, and the city of Frisco. That's what all of our public private partnerships include, all those partners. And but we had reinvested in that facility when we built the Soccer Hall of Fame, and that was an intentional effort to build football style locker rooms so that we could host bowl games and other things in our soccer stadium. And so again, every time we've had a chance to go, hey, we need to make these improvements, everybody has gotten around the table and said, yeah, we're all partners in this. We all want to make this happen. And so when it was time for Toyota Stadium to get a facelift, which really, like Dan says, it's basically like building a brand new stadium, on where the existing stadium is. It was an easy conversation. I'm not going to say that there wasn't a lot of legal back and forth and everything else, but the all the partners were so committed to working together to do something great that it's an easy conversation versus going, hey, I got a crazy idea and I got to sell it to everybody. When you're doing something else, we've done that, but now we've maintained those partnerships to where something that would be almost impossible in a lot of other cities is possible here. Um, just to do that. So yes, we're excited about new Toyota Stadium, or Toyota Stadium 2.0. And we think it's going to open us up to hosting a lot of other bigger events, and it will position us great for that 2031 Women's World Cup to host some group matches out here.
I'm sure about that. And I could talk to you for hours. We'll have to do a part two of this, but just to close us out, what is one thing you hope that people take away from your docuseries?
Well, I mean, I really intentionally behind the scenes said I want other people in sports tourism to see how important storytelling is, and to see, um, I mean, I've sat in rooms at trade shows and conferences where people said, yeah, but my job is this. And I go, yeah, but it doesn't have to just be that. If you care about the overall thing, what you're trying to do will happen naturally because you've cared about the entire spectrum. And I just felt like, I'm going to do a session this year at Congress about the docu-series. And I kind of I have a slide that shows like 6 or 7 cities that push out, bring your game here, or your game fits here, or we do this here. And it's all kind of the same ad that just says, look, I have this facility, I have this facility. Hey, we have hotels. Yeah. In every city has it. Right. And I'm like, but this right here shows that this docu-series that's playing behind me every once in a while, shows that we're thinking more broadly, which I think opens rights holders up to going, hey, they're thinking bigger picture. They're not just going, oh, it doesn't hit this room night metric, so they're not even going to talk to me, or I'm going to have to fight with them about how many room nights we track. They're thinking about sports as a whole. And I think if more of the industry cared about sports and not just the metrics that they're charged with, I think the whole industry would get better. And I think this docu-series is supposed to be an example of what it means when you think that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I have learned so much just from this short amount of time that we've had. And so I'm serious. I really think that we should do a part two of this. I think people are going to get a lot out from both sides of things. And I really just want to thank you. Our industry is better because you're in it and your openness to help make the industry as a whole better. And so I really appreciate your time. And so if people are interested in watching the docu-series, where would they find it?
Yeah, they can go on our website. They can search for Where Greatness Grows. It's on YouTube. It lives on YouTube. So you can search it on there. We have our Visit Frisco channel on YouTube. But you can go to our website and find those episodes there. And so, yeah, I mean, you can search, we're at Frisco TX on most social channels and things like that. And so I think that's a great way to connect with it. And you'll probably be seeing it because we will be doing some advertising in the industry, pushing out this docu-series and our new branding, which all kind of happen together. But hopefully if you're in the industry, you won't miss it over the next year or so, because we do have a year-long marketing plan. But hopefully if you hear this, you'll go, well, maybe I will watch it, instead of being like, oh, that's just another city doing the same stuff.
I can once again attest it is not. It's unlike anything that we've seen within the industry. And so I'm really excited for more people to have their eyes on it. So, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Hey, thank you. And the feeling's mutual. I'm very much an admirer of what you guys are doing. So keep it up.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone. Until next time. Bye.